Hey there, Marcus Hutzel here, and I wanted to talk about why I use two cameras, or sometimes even 3 or 4 cameras when I film videos here in my home office, and why I usually don't even look at that second camera. I've gotten some praise, but also some complaints about the way I edit and present my videos, and specifically the placement and use of my current side shot, this camera over here to my right, which gives you a semi-profile shot of me. So I just wanted to talk about this and share with you why I film this way with these angles and why I mostly don't ever look over to that second camera, because I think it might help you not only understand my reasoning and my choices, but maybe give you some insight, some tips or tricks to use in your own setup or your own editing. And I've wanted to do this video for a while explaining how and why I use multiple cameras. But what prompted me to finally do this video was a comment I got on another one of my videos where I use this particular side shot, and I wanted to read that comment and add my rebuttal. So here goes. Excellent video, great content. With all due respect, that second camera you film yourself with doesn't help your cause at all. Either kill it or look at it when you're talking. Otherwise, we are staring at your ear. All best. Now, I disagree with this person's point of view on how I use my side view camera, but I do appreciate the feedback because feedback is important for all of us. It may give us another way to look at something that we're doing that we may not notice from our own perspective. But I think what they're mostly getting at is the fact that when I cut to that side camera, they're right. I don't look over there at that camera most of the time. And yes, I will admit it's a bit far off to the side, a bit further than I actually wanted, so you are seeing me at a decently sharp profile of mostly this side of my face, and sure, my ear kind of, but there are a few reasons the camera is in that position, and I'll get to those. So I'm going to first cover why I use multiple cameras to film, and then I'll talk about why my second camera is most often in that position and why I rarely look at it. So why do I use multiple cameras when I film? Well, reason number one is because that's what I want to do and I like it. Next reason. All right, reason number two, filming with a second camera gives me a way to edit my videos so that you can't tell that I made mistakes. And trust me, I make a lot of mistakes. I've already made mistakes in this video, and hopefully you can't tell, because if I mess up a line during recording, I can just stop, back up a bit in the script, repeat that line again, and try to remember and imitate my movements and tone of voice so that I can cut the video at that particular point, most likely cutting to that second camera view during that edit. And if done well, you can't tell that a single sentence in my video might actually be cut together in the middle of that sentence. I can basically fool you into thinking I'm just really good at talking without verbal errors, which I am not. It can take me an hour to record a video that I eventually cut down to 15 minutes. And the ability to use that second view to cut to leads to reason number three, and that is having fewer jump cuts on this front camera view. A jump cut is where you would just make a cut or edit in the footage while someone is talking to that camera, but you or the subject will almost always be in a different position from before to after that cut. And so it's usually very obvious. And jump cuts can look unprofessional depending on where or whom you're delivering the footage to. Or it can just be jarring for the viewer. And you can add short cross dissolves or fades to help with the abruptness of a jump cut, but when I was filming with only one camera, it meant there would just be times when I would either make a mistake or need to stop and catch my breath, and therefore I'd have to edit that out and I'd have to splice it together and make it look as natural as possible. And I wanted to get away from having jump cuts on a single camera view in my videos as much as possible, so I chose to start filming with and edit to a second angle. And although cutting to that second angle is still an abrupt cut, at least it's a seemingly conscious choice to switch to a different angle as opposed to only a necessary cut because I made a mistake. Jump cuts just aren't always enjoyable to watch and certainly aren't a way to edit and deliver professional content, at least not from a single camera view. But delivering a non-stop script straight to camera is pretty hard to do as well. We're human, we mess up. So in an effort to give you a video that flows better with the dialogue, I've opted to use my second camera view and cut to that view to keep my dialogue moving along without a visual jump cut on this front camera view. Now, there obviously is another way to hide necessary cuts or edits in your main camera view, and that's just covering up that cut with B-roll or some other footage of maybe what you're talking about. And this is helpful if you only have a single camera to film with. And I'll do that a lot of the time as well, and it's a very good technique, especially when you're talking about something like a product or when you're demonstrating something. So if I'm talking about this microphone, I could just show you the microphone in a close-up while you hear my voice, and I can edit together as many different sentences as I want, and as long as it sounds good, you won't know that I made those edits because you're watching a close-up of a microphone. However, oddly enough, I did that whole previous sentence in one take, so I didn't need to edit it, but I could if I wanted to. All right, moving on. Reason number 4, a lot of content is filmed, edited, and consumed this way. That is, filmed with multiple cameras from different angles with multiple cuts in the edit to a different view. Watch any modern interview because often the talent or the person being filmed, if being filmed by 2 cameras, rarely looks at that second camera. And you'll see this a lot in documentary and interview style work. Sometimes the person being interviewed might be looking directly into camera 1, but not looking at camera 2 really ever. And sometimes they're intentionally not looking into either camera, so their eyes are never directed at the lens of either camera. Their eyes are always looking slightly off camera. That's a different creative style, and usually it's because the person being interviewed is meant to visually be talking to the person doing the interviewing instead of you, the viewer. But of course, sometimes the style of interview does have the talent looking into the main camera, but in that second shot, the talent rarely looks over there. And even with frequency of edits or how many times the camera cuts to a different view of anything is probably more than you think, at least with modern content. The last show I was watching, I pulled out my iPhone, I opened up the stopwatch, and I hit start, and then I hit lap every time I saw a cut to a different camera view. And there was a cut about every 5 to 7 seconds, and it wasn't necessarily distracting to me for that particular content. It flowed fairly well. And that's a bit fast, every 5 to 7 seconds, but again, it worked. This is in fairly drastic contrast to a different yet older movie I was watching on a different night by Alfred Hitchcock, where the whole movie was shot with only about 4 or 5 long continuous camera shots for the entire movie. It was more like a play, and that's fine too. But this isn't cinema. This is an instructional video on YouTube. So maybe it's our modern attention spans that lead to more cuts, maybe not, but modern video content, films, TV shows, interviews, documentaries, they lead to these editing techniques. And this means our brains and our eyes don't seem to mind a lot of cuts. And there are lots of other content creators here on YouTube that have similar setups to mine. And I actually kind of like it when the person doesn't always look at the second camera. It kind of gives me another point of view of that person's style, or maybe a wider view so I can see their space, or just another view of something they're maybe holding in their hands and talking about. And for me, it's just something that's visually interesting to see. But my point is, we, consumers of content, are used to seeing those cutaway side shots where the person is not always looking at a second camera. And to most of us, it obviously doesn't bother us. Otherwise, people wouldn't film and edit this way. So many people's brains just accept this as okay, and I think it's okay. It doesn't bother me. And yes, my second side shot is fairly far off to my right. Again, a bit further than I actually want it. Most people seem to be okay with it. We're used to similar angles and other forms of content, so I'm just incorporating that style in my own videos to hide my mistakes and give you a different point of view. All right, reason number 5. Having a second camera angle gives me a backup recording. There have been more than a few times where I've recorded for about 30 to 45 minutes with a single camera or a single audio source and something got messed up. Either the audio was messed up, or a couple of times I ejected the card from my camera without stopping the camera from recording first, and most often that leads to a corrupt, unrecoverable video file. But since I've been filming with 2 cameras, I always have a semi-backup to fall back to, even if my backup recording doesn't have me always looking at the camera. I can still use that footage and either cut certain parts from it or just use it in its entirety despite the fact that it may not be perfect. And that second camera angle or any second camera recording has saved me plenty of times. And I do this all the time in my live event production work. I have a second, usually wide shot camera as a safety to cut to, just in case. backups will save you every time. So I just incorporate my experience in live event production here in my home studio with a second camera. And I definitely suggest that if possible, if you have the budget, if you have the means, have a second camera going if you can. Use your iPhone. If you can't afford two cameras, that's fine. Second camera, if possible, always have a secondary audio recording. I have two microphones recording me right now because if one goes out, I have another one. And lastly, reason number 6 may not be why I film with two cameras, but I film with two different brands of cameras. My main front view is still my Panasonic GH5, while my side camera and any other cameras are either my Sony FX30, my Sony a7 IV, or sometimes my little tiny Sony ZV-1 Mark II. And using a Panasonic camera in front, but always a different brand for one of my other shots, gives me more practice at color matching the footage from those cameras. Some of my older videos, and some of my current ones too, you can tell that the two angles don't match in color. And noticing this in my own content and continuing to film this way allowed me to get better at seeing what those differences are between cameras and trying to fix or match the footage at the very least while editing. And this has helped me in my professional live event production work as well, but there, with live event production, it can be more tricky because if you're presented with 2 or 3 cameras from different manufacturers and have to make it work, you have to use the controls and color settings on the cameras to make them look as close as possible to each other in real time because it's for a live event or a live stream, and you don't always have the luxury of fixing it in post. You have to do it on the camera so that any 2 or 3 cameras match as closely as they can given their own settings. So filming with 2 cameras, adjusting things before I film, and practicing with color correction and editing just furthers my knowledge and experience. And it means that if I make mistakes in color correction, at least I'm making those mistakes on my own content here on YouTube and learning what to do and what not to do so that I'm not making those mistakes on a paying client's content. All right, so those are the reasons why I have and use a second camera. But let me address why I rarely look over and address that camera most of the time, and why it's maybe a bit too far off to my side. That's a difference of opinion, but let's go through it. So the main reason I often don't look over at that second camera is because I am almost always using a teleprompter on my main camera. As much rambling or babbling that I do, it's actually scripted out most of the time. So my main front camera has my teleprompter right in front of it, and if I just pick up this other camera, you can see right there, there are the words, and I'm getting off script, and the script doesn't know what to do, but I'm reading these words as I film this because I just kind of have to. That's just kind of how my brain needs to do these types of videos. And my second camera view just doesn't have a teleprompter because I'd have to not only have and mount a second teleprompter over there, but I'd have to sync up the scripts in case I wanted to turn and look at that second camera. And if I take my eyes off of that script and even just look around real quick, I am not good at finding my place back in the script. So I have to usually keep my eyes on the script and try to act natural about it. Otherwise, I'll probably make a mistake. Which leads all the way back to my previous reasoning of having another camera view to cut to and edit to when I do make those mistakes. Now, why is my second camera angle so far off to the side, giving you more of a profile than maybe I'd like? Well, that has to do with my current desk setup and my desire to have 2 pairs of speakers here on my desk. If we look at this wide shot, I've currently got a pair of KRK Rocket 5 studio monitors and also a pair of Yamaha HS5 monitors because I'm a gearhead, and even though I originally only wanted a single set of speakers here, I chose to have 2 sets so I can swap between them and listen to my mixes on different speakers to make sure it sounds good, etc., etc., etc. And even though my desk really didn't have a large enough upper shelf for those 2 sets of speakers to sit on, I built some floating speaker stands for the Yamaha speakers, and I even did a video on how I built those stands. I'll link to it below. And since I also always mount my laptop to my right when I'm here at my desk, my laptop not only acts as a second monitor, but that meant that my webcam that's installed on the laptop was also already off to my side. So why not just put my better web camera, my Sony FX30, directly above my laptop's webcam? This lets me have virtual meetings with my main monitor in front of me to take notes, and if I need to address the people on the meeting, I just turn over and look at the camera and talk to them, and I still have a monitor underneath my web camera, so if I need to make notes, I can still make notes while seemingly still addressing the people on the virtual call. So the spacing of my desk just worked out, but that second set of speakers pushes my camera further off to the side than I initially wanted, but I think it still works. I'm sure I'll change my mind one of these days. And that wider camera angle means that, again, you can see my desk or anything I might be talking about and need to show a wider view of. If I'm demonstrating a microphone or an audio mixer or something, I can still read my script while showing you a different view and showing you more of what I'm doing, maybe with equipment. And finally, camera angles are often about what you don't want the camera to see. Just like any movie or TV set, you create a view for the camera and thereby hide everything else. And in the case of my home office, as you may have seen, if I've used that in the edit at all in this video, I think I have, and I'm going to get to why I used it before this point. But if I show you these two views, one with the camera on my right and one with the camera on my left. With the camera on my right, this camera sees a very limited background because this is the smaller side of my home office. But with the camera on my left, that camera can see the rest of my home office, which is the larger portion of the room. So it's deeper, it has more stuff that can get cluttered up. And as you can see, if you look back there, it's a little hard to see because I kept it dark, but I've got a bunch of stuff over there. I've got a couch, it's got a bunch of stuff on it. I have some more equipment set up here because I'm actually prepping for another video, but I just needed to hide that stuff for this video. So if I use this camera and that camera and just put everything out of view, that camera nor that camera can see it. And I can just kind of be messy over there if I need to. And even if I need to hop on a quick virtual call, since I use that camera, anything back here, and often I'll hang clothes up back here in the background in front of the guitar. But if I need to, I can grab those, throw them on the other side of the room, turn on that camera, and now my attendees have a semi-clean view of everything, again, while that side of the office may be in quite disarray. So those are my reasons for filming with a second camera and why I've chosen these main positions. But remember, nobody, including myself, needs a second camera. You can do any and all YouTube content with a single camera or even your smartphone, cutting to B-roll over top of your cuts if you want. Filming with multiple cameras is how I choose to do it. It helps me get better at color correction, syncing things in post, editing out my mistakes so that maybe you can't tell, and having backups, and plays a role into my actual live event production work. So I hope some of this has helped you, give you some insight and ideas for your own setup. So if I don't see you here, maybe I'll see you there, or maybe there. I don't know, somewhere. Later. When I'm here at my desk, see, I lost my place in the script just by doing that.